Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of NintendoFuse's Industry Talk. I'm Barry, and today I am joined by my very special guest, Rozen.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here.
Now, Rozen here is the arranger of a brand new album that just came out. It's called Ballads of Hyrule. This is actually released through Materia Collective, which if you've watched some of our other industry talks, you'll see we've talked with them before. Now, can you tell us a little bit about this album, how it came to be, and why you chose to do it?
So, last year I produced another Zelda album called Ballads of Hyrule, and that was a very dark and heavy and lore-heavy as well album. And I really wanted to release more music. I mean, as you can tell, I'm a huge Zelda fan, so I'm always like just writing arrangements and remixes from Zelda music. And when I was deciding what my next project would be, the thing I've been doing lately is going back to my old releases. So I found this album called Ballads. It's called Neighbor's Love, Ballads of Hyrule, that I did, I believe, like 2 years ago. And back in the day, I only did like an EP, so it was just like 4 tracks. And I decided I wanted to remake them slash remaster them and put them in an album. Originally, the plan for that album, for that project, was going to be like a 3-part series. I was going to keep going with Fire Wind and Din's Fire. And as I kept working on it, I kept being conflicted by these 2 albums. I was like, oh man, I have so many cool tracks for Din's Fire, conceptually. Or no, but I really want to do like, the wind ballady version of this. And I was like, screw this. I'm just going to make an album now with all of these parts. So it's more cohesive and more conceptual than just like releasing the 3 separately. So I decided to come up with this concept that is very, very radically different from Ballads of Hyrule. I wanted something more melodic, more symphonic, which is what I'm mostly known for. I went back to my roots of video game arranging, if you want to call it like that. And so yeah, I decided to have a more lighthearted version of these melodies that we all love. So yeah, that's basically what the idea was behind it.
Yeah, and I got the chance to listen to this album, and let me just first off say, it is gorgeous. It is absolutely gorgeous. I've actually listened to it prior to today, and then I replayed it today before just to get it fresh in my mind. And while I was doing some work, because E3 is going on at the time of this recording, and doing some work in regards to E3 prep, I had it on the background. I'm listening. I'm like, this is so beautiful, And for me, one thing I caught me right offhand is my favorite track of all time from Zelda is Ballad of the Windfish. Always has been, always will be. And like second track is like boom, Ballad. I'm like, oh my god, like I'm like, oh, there it is. Like yes, like, and it was so beautiful with the vocals in it, and I'm like, this is just probably the most beautiful version of this song I've ever heard. I really, really enjoyed it. And everything in this whole album, it's 15 tracks, and everything is gorgeous. So I do want to let you know that like it is appreciated, and I really encourage people listening to this, go download this album or buy this album. Like, this is awesome. Now, obviously you're a Zelda fan. What made you choose these 15 particular songs? I mean, there's tons of Zelda music, and there's only more growing. Why these 15?
That's a good question. So 4 of them are pre-selected tracks, right? Like the ones I remade, which are Fairy's Tears, Lost in the Wind, Sheik's Devotion, and Neighbor's Love. So those belong to Neighbor's Love EP. So those were already chosen. I tried to, like I mentioned before, I tried to come up with a concept that fits all these songs together. And what I usually do is I start like, okay, I'm gonna make a Twilight Princess album, right? Like that's how Ballads of Hyrule, my previous album, started, right? And then I'm like, oh man, but I really want to do like Ocarina of Time, and I want to do like Wind Waker, and I want to do everything. So instead of just going per franchise, I tried to pick one song that makes sense that make sense together. So the thematic in Ballads of Hyrule is the legacy of the goddesses, right? So I tried to pick songs that, in my opinion, sound like what defines Hyrule in different timelines, you know, and where you can see the power of Din, which is, you know, like all the landscapes and mountains, the power of Farore, I still don't know how to pronounce that name, but the wind one, which is responsible for the fauna and nature and all that, and then Nehru's power, which is more the love and the life in Hyrule. So I decided to go through basically like all the songs from the franchise and just try to pick the ones that would fit these themes. For example, Lost in the Wind, I call the track like that, but it's pretty much Ariel's theme from Wind Waker, and it's a song that really evokes wind and losing someone in the wind. That's why it's called Lost in the Wind. It's like you lose your sister to the wind, and this really reminds me of that power of Farore in this case. And there's other songs like I'm trying to think which ones, like anything that has to do with like the landscapes of Hyrule, like Stables, which is like Epona song, Kakariko Village. Like I wanted like some village themes in there. So that's basically what I thought of when picking the songs for this album in particular.
The choice is excellent, and I love the thematic themes that you did pick. And one thing I do like is that I don't think there's any game that's really like overrepresented. Like I hate seeing like a compilation album and it'd be like out of 15 songs, 8 of them are Ocarina of Time. I'm like,
yeah,
no, come on, like there are other games besides Ocarina.
No, I'm there with you for sure.
And I like that. I like that you have a nice balance. You have some songs. You know, it would have been interesting to see like your take, like the Dark World theme from Link to the Past. That would have been a neat thing. I hope to see these in the future. I hope to see,
of course, yeah.
You know, some other ones like that.
Yeah, I definitely have a wish list.
yeah, and the temple theme from Zelda too. You know, eventually.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Such a great piece. So yeah, I would love to see these in the future, and I hope that's a hint that there will be more Zelda albums coming from you.
For sure.
Now I do need to mention that you do other video game music too, and you were nominated for a Gang Award in 2016 for Best Game Music Cover. Or remix for Vault 111 or 111 from Fallout 4. And then last year in 2017, you actually won one for Lebri Fatali.
Yep, correct.
Talk about that. Like, how was that experience?
Well, that was unexpected for sure. First, I can talk about Vault 111. Because I didn't expect it to get so much attention. So I published this arrangement back in the day of Fallout 4, and I believe the original soundtrack wasn't out yet, and especially not on Spotify. So I guess that had a lot to do with it, because I released my arrangement of the main theme, which is really gorgeous. I really love the game, and I love the main theme that Announcer wrote for it. And I guess it just got a lot of attention because I keep getting comments that people thought it was the original until they discovered there was like an original soundtrack in there like a few months later.
A good compliment, though.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I guess so. It's I still tried to do it different enough, right? So it was very fun. But yeah, so that got nominated for that year, and then the next year, I participated in another Materia Collective, like massive album where they have like, you know, about like 150 artists doing what I do, just like with different tracks from particular games. Those are compilation albums. So I was working on a Final Fantasy VIII compilation album called Successor. And this was like, I believe, Materia Collective's like second album ever. So it was like, it feels like a long time ago. It wasn't that long ago, but and for that one, I decided to remix one of my favorite Final Fantasy tracks of all time, which is the opening to Final Fantasy VIII, Liberi Fatali.
Yeah.
But I wanted to make a very different version of it, right? I mean, still with orchestra, still with choir, but I wanted like a heavy hitting, like electronic hybrid orchestral with like some choir, and just like I like defining it as like industrial, which is funny because that's how I also defined the Vault one. I tried to do like that industrial hybrid style for both of those.
That makes sense. I mean, Final
Yeah,
Fantasy VIII was the most futuristic, really, of the Final Fantasies before 15, of course.
yeah, exactly. And yeah, so I got to go to. I usually go to the Gang Awards that happen at GDC every year, and it was just a very cool surprise that that got picked and got the award as well. So that was cool.
Yeah, and that's great. Now you could actually say award-winning arranger, award-winning
Yeah.
composer. Now, how's it been working with Materia Collective on this? Is it
Well,
positive?
it's been yeah, no, it's all been positive. Sebastian Wolf, the founder of Materia Collective, has been a big part of making my productions, uh, taking them to the next level. And I say that because he's helped me produce these albums that I've been releasing. I've I believe it's been my Nier Automata album called Glory to Mankind that was released last year, Sins of Hyrule, and this Ballads of Hyrule album as well. And one thing we always want to make sure is that the production quality is, better every time. And by this, I mean, like, like hire more live musicians. I usually invite um, a few musicians on each track to just like help double with like the samples or whatever. But for Synthesizer, for example, we got to record a string orchestra at Abbey Road Studios in London. So that would have been possible without him. So yeah, I would say it's like overwhelmingly positive because that means that each time I make an album, the production can be better and I can do crazier things. For the next one, I'm sure we're gonna want more live instruments and more tracks and
Oh yeah, I can tell with the live instruments for sure,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm glad to hear it's positive. Yeah, Sebastian is a really nice guy. When
Yeah,
I got to
yes.
talk with him,
Mm-hmm.
now you did hint the next album. What do you think your next album is going to be? Do you think you're going to stay Zelda? You think you're going to go to another game franchise?
Well, I can safely say I'm always gonna be remixing Zelda as long as there's games or like more tracks from the old games become licensable, because that's another important issue. That I cannot just like license everything and release everything that I want. But anyway, we can talk about that later. Um, I do have two big projects in the works. Cannot really say what's going to be, but one of them is going to be a solo one for sure. Like I try to like spice it up, just like another video game project and then a solo one, and then try to go back and forth. I already know it's already planned. It's already been started, and hopefully I'll be able to share details for that solo album soon. But uh, it's definitely going to be so people figure it out like right away, and it was kind of an accident. I don't know why it happened like that, but people figured that Ballads of Hyrule is not really. I don't want to call it like a sequel to Sins of Hyrule, but people figure out that it was part of the same set. It has the same title at the end, I guess. So yeah, there's going to be a third part to it. Again, I don't want to call them sequels, but I guess we can call them just like set sequels.
Yeah.
So you can expect the next one to be something of Hyrule, right? And what I'm trying to do is, and what people figure out is like I'm doing the Triforce concept, where Sins of Hyrule is all about power. So we got that part of it covered. Ballads of Hyrule is more like the wisdom and like the Zelda part of the Triforce. And, that brings us to the last one, which is courage, which is going to be more about like heroism and Link and like and other stuff like that. So that's all I can say for now, I guess.
And that's enough tease. As long as you don't go Capcom on us and cancel that third one,
Oh my gosh, no! Don't worry. Even if I have to release it independently, I'll do it. I'm not gonna stop soon.
No, that's good to hear. Now you say solo. Is it your own music, non-video game related music?
No, it's all video game music for now. I mean, I am working on a couple of video games, so there's also gonna be like I'm also going to be releasing like original music in the next couple of years. But no, I'm still doing that other album that I'm talking about is also going to be
Also
video
video
game
game.
related. Yeah, for sure.
Hey, you know what? There's a lot of wonderful video game music out there, and
There's
it's a
so much of
great,
it.
great source of inspiration for sure.
Mhm.
And I hope to see, you out there, that'd be really cool if you did some original piece and, E3, they'd be like, hey, come out, composer, Ross to the stage, talk about the music in this game. I think that'd be great. You should.
Yeah, fingers crossed one day.
Have you thought about working with a developer and say,
I am
original music?
working, like I said, I'm working on a couple of video games right now,
Oh, okay.
with different IPs. So yeah, you'll probably be hearing from me more in the next couple of years, I guess. Still not sure what these games are going to be released because they take so long. Now I understand being working on a video game. Like,
Can you say who the developers are, or who the publishers are at least, or?
well, one of them is going to be Sony. It's like an indie studio, but like an indie game, but it's how do you say it? It's going to be published by Sony. The other one is just going to be another indie game for the Nintendo Switch, but it's not Nintendo. It's just like indie.
It's not made by Nintendo, but it's going to.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's really cool. I definitely look forward to hearing about that.
Yeah,
both titles, I think that's great. Now, when you're working with these developers, how is it working with the different developers, even the indie studios, versus doing independent stuff like this, Ballads of Hyrule?
Well, it's night and day, right? Because even within these two video games, it's like the people I work for have very different workflows. Like one of them is like very flexible. The other one is more like corporate. Like, so I do have to. So I do music full time, right? And this means like these video games, arranging, remixing, and I also write music for trailers. So it's kind of like I have to like really come up with a schedule that's going to work like that, because it's like 3 different workflows for like different clients and stuff like that. But at the same time, I do for one of the studios I work there. I'm there like part time. Let's call it like that, because I'm there like 2 weeks a month. So yeah, it's really fun. It's very different. I have to like really separate them so it doesn't get like all confusing, but it's super fun to be working on a video game where everyone is like very, very creative and supportive, and like it's kind of like we all try to figure out stuff together, especially with technology and the different like engines that there are for making games, and like especially for audio implementation. So yeah, it's really fun.
Do you ever get confused, like if one of them's like a more hardcore, like God of War style, and then like the other one's more like Yoshi upbeat and happy go lucky, like, oh I got this piece for you, and you do it, and it's like war theme, and it's like and it's like, wait, what is this? So it's like, oh crap, wrong. Sorry.
Game style wise, or like names or anything, because they're so different, I don't get confused with that. But what tends to happen is like if an idea gets rejected because it didn't really fit like the style of the game, then it kind of works for the other one. So it's kind of like I get a lot of crossover with compositions there.
So what you're saying is, if we're playing one of these two games and we listen to music, it may actually be music originally designed for the other game that was rejected and accepted.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it all depends on the style and like what people are in the mood of, and yeah. So I guess that happens all the time. I want to think.
See, that's really cool. I love to like hear accidental things, like even with other bands, and like there are some songs that have gotten on albums that weren't really supposed to be there, and it was like, oh, this was an accident, but we sent it to print anyway. And it'd be interesting to see, if there's any of those cases where like, oh yeah, this song was originally written for Game A, but it's actually part of Game B's soundtrack now.
I'm sure it's happened. I mean, I've definitely heard stories from my composer friends, so I can assume that happening on like a higher level, or like for a AAA title games.
Now, how, I don't know if this has happened before. Have you written for other games, or are these the first two you've done?
I've only done like mobile games or like shorter indie games. Yeah.
I was gonna say, how meta would it be if you like went on your computer one day and you got an email like, hey, listen to this, and it's somebody doing an arrangement of one of your pieces like you're doing for the Zelda stuff?
Oh my gosh, that would be amazing. Yeah, I guess what that would happen if I ever write something for a video game, right? It's like it's gonna come to full circle when someone arranges my work or whatever. I don't know. I think that would be pretty cool. Hopefully, I write music good enough that people will even want to remix, you know.
Well, I can't say I've heard your original stuff, but based on your arrangements, if you even bring half of that talent into your original, I can only say they're most likely amazing. But
Thanks.
I look forward to hearing original stuff from you, and I definitely hope to find out what games they're a part of, so I can go.
I'll
I
definitely keep you posted, you
know,
know.
I know, that's why it sounds so similar,
I know, I know, I know.
That's the same horn.
I'm sure there's people that can figure that out, so I'm not surprised.
No, I don't have that good of a musical ear to be able to distinguish one horn from another or anything like that. I know some people can. So now that you're actually working in the industry, you're actually doing stuff for games. What's your take on the appreciation and the amount of time, resources, energy going into the music of video games as opposed to the graphics and the gameplay and the marketing and all that?
Oh my
Do you
gosh,
think it's important? Do you think they're doing a good job, focusing on the music as well, or?
it's definitely an odyssey because I always thought that it was like a lot of work, but I never thought how much work goes into not even the writing part, but the audio implementation in a video game. I've started to appreciate that more in video games because I'm gonna put an example: Breath of the Wild, where people say like there's no music, even though the special edition soundtrack comes with like 6 or 5 CDs of like who knows how many hundreds of tracks, and people are still saying that there's no music, right? So I think one very important thing in video game music is that it has to be subtle, right? Like, yeah, it's cool to write memorable themes that people can like whistle to, and sing along, in the shower or whatever. But at the same time, that you've done a good job if people didn't notice the music and it was still there, right? Because it's all about the immersion experience. This happens a lot. I don't know if you played the new God of War, but
Yep, I played and beat it.
Yeah, amazing game, right? And amazing music too that I'm sure you noticed.
Yep.
But for example, in boss fights, it's like it's there because it's helping the action and it's helping the interactivity of the battle itself. But it's not like, oh yeah, I can totally sing this back to you like after beating that boss, right? Whereas in a Zelda game, if you go to like, I don't know, Kakariko Village and Ocarina of Time for the first time and you get out of it, you're like, oh, I can totally sing this back to you, or like, I don't know.
Especially because the music in Ocarina of Time is actually a remix of Link to the Past's.
Exactly. Yeah, because that was a bad example, but like Kokiri Forest or any of those like you hear for the first time, right? But so I think that people still want to hear that like looping, like memorable melody in Zelda games, and where that can be also very distracting and like take you out of the immersion. So of course there should be a balance between both, right? Like have the very melodic, like cool, memorable songs and epic ones, but at the same time have them be so immersive that you don't notice them unless you like listen to a soundtrack like separately. So I've definitely come to realize that there's way more work put into music and audio implementation itself than I thought before. So
I agree. I definitely think some of the best soundtracks you don't even realize they're there. It is immersive, and on your album you do have Breath of the Wild track. You have Cass's music, and I think that is like such a standout piece because
for sure
you hear it from a distance, and as you get closer, obviously there he is playing the accordion. But yeah, I felt the same way about Breath of the Wild. When I finished it, I said, I can't really go back and hum like any of the themes from Breath of the Wild like I can almost every other Zelda game. And it almost, in a way, in my mind, it was like, well, maybe there was no music. Maybe it was like all in my head. I went back and played. I'm like, oh, there was. It was just, wow, it just fit so well. Like I was so immersed in that world.
Exactly.
That it became a part of it. It's like you go through a forest, you don't notice every single tree, but they're still there.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think last year was such a good year for music. My favorite was Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I don't know.
Oh my gosh, that's an amazing game. Yeah,
an amazing game, an amazing album,
and soundtrack. Yeah,
I actually bought the deluxe Japanese album just because I'm like I have to own this. Like it's so good, and it's weird because I love Zelda music. I've always loved Zelda music, and when I went back and I was like, oh yeah, Breath of the Wild does have music. You know, I thought it was beautiful, but for me, like nothing even came close last year to Xenoblade Chronicles 2.
Yeah,
And I don't
that's a
think
good
that
year for
enough
music.
you know, not enough
Yeah.
recognition. I really don't. And I'd love to hear your take on it. Like if you did like a Xenoblade album, you know, with the music from the first game and the next and then two,
Mhm, mhm.
I think that would be amazing because I'd love to hear your spin on it.
I get that all the time. Like people really have wanted me to do music from the Xenoblade series, and I definitely like can hear something that I could contribute to it or whatever. Because I really like the music. I really like the style. Um, it's a bit harder than doing solo music because this happened to me when I arranged Nier Automata music. So when I listen to those two soundtracks, like Xenoblades and Nier Automata, I was like, oh my gosh, this sounds exactly like something I would write. It has like all my orchestration like decisions. You know, it's like all these choices that I would have made at the same time, and like piano heavy, and like you know some of those styles. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's too close to what I like and do. So that's the hardest to arrange because it's like where do you go from there? Not because like the arrangement is perfect, but it's like where how do I make it so it sounds more like my own voice if it's already kind of like what I imagine it will sound, you know? So
Well, that could also be a nice challenge for you, you
yeah,
know.
yeah, it
You
is
know,
for
in
sure.
your profession, you have a voice. You have
Hmm.
that. It's just like, you know, as a writer, you know, we have a voice, and to challenge ourselves to go out of our comfort zone,
True. Hmm.
sometimes you get your best pieces.
Yeah.
So you try and say, hey, how can I change this, which already sounds like mine, into a new voice, which is also
Hmm.
mine,
No,
and
true.
you might discover something brand new and could elevate it. Or it could just be a waste of time. You rip out all your hair and you curse me to death for the rest of time. Why'd you make me do it?
No, but it's definitely been on the horizon. Like I hope I have time and a good reason to release Xenoblade music uh, remixed.
I
So
hope so because
hopefully,
you
it's
know,
really good music. Yeah.
it's that and Star Fox. You know, like Star Fox.
Oh my god, don't even get me started. I would have already put out so many albums from Star Fox if it wasn't because it's not licensable entirely yet. And, you know, I just don't want to put out albums that are just like, oh, here, you know.
No, no, you got to do stuff. Yeah, that would be great. Like you could just take like Smash Brothers and just go to the music selection and just like arrange the entire album, and there you go. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
just here you go, boom, done.
I know.
But
But yeah,
Nier
Star Fox has
Automata
been
is
it.
another, you know,
Mhm.
amazing soundtrack, and I'm glad you got
Mhm.
to do that. I have to listen to it now.
Mhm.
You know, a lot of people called that album of the year,
Yeah,
for music, and I think that's because I didn't hear Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I think it's
I
because it came out
know.
December 3rd. You know, it just too
Well, the
late.
thing is, like, it's what you said. That year was extremely good for music overall. I feel like there were all the nominees and even the ones that were nominated. All the games I played that year, I was like, "Wow, how do you pick the, you know, like, how you
Yeah,
pick the best one?"
Persona 5 had a wonderful
Yeah,
album, you
exactly.
know,
Yeah,
and yeah, it's just so
Horizon,
much. Horizon had
Sonic.
a good theme. A Mario
Hmm.
Odyssey has
Yep.
some beautiful music, and Jump Up Superstar.
Hmm.
Still to this day, I catch myself, you know, snapping to, you know.
Yeah.
It, it was such a good year for music, and this
Hmm.
year, I don't know if you've been watching E3 at all.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
did you watch? And I know obviously we were recording this right after Ubisoft went. Did you
Yeah. I
watch
just
Ubisoft?
watched it. Yeah.
All right,
Mhm.
so you saw that thing with Starlink, right? Like when I heard that music, I was just like, "It's
I was
over."
like, "Whoa!" Yeah, I know.
Like we were literally just talking about that. Like I heard that
Yeah.
and it was an arrangement, and I was like, "This
Yes.
is such a
Yes.
good arrangement." Like, oh my god, like I'm hyped. Like that's it. You sold me on the game. Like that's all
I
I
know.
needed. Was that music alone. And the same with they did Donkey Kong. You know, they had the
Oh yeah, for the
Great
rabbits
Pyramid out
one.
there, and
Hmm.
they had the band, and like I'm like this is so cool. You know, like just
I know it
hearing
was
that
really
live.
awesome.
And that's what I picture. Like the next thing, you know, you get up there on stage and you're like, yeah, this is my music now, you know.
One day, one can dream. But yeah, it's funny because I had it. I had the Ubisoft one in the background, and yeah, when the Starling thing happened, I just heard the music, and I'm like, "Whoa, what's going on? Am I like, did I miss a Nintendo show or whatever?" You know? That was really cool.
Yeah, and that's just it. The music is just so
Yeah, just the
powerful,
music. Yeah,
and a lot of people don't realize the music that goes into video games, and it's great to see, you know, more young talent like yourself, you know, getting into it. Like
Mhm.
hearing the arrangements is one thing, because I'm not saying it's easy at all, but you're already working with an established piece
Exactly.
where you're composing your own and you are doing your own for these games. Like, to me, that is, the challenge, and that's where the
No, of
real skill
course.
comes into. So I really
Yeah.
can't wait to hear these two games. I just can't wait. Obviously,
Thanks. I'll keep you
we're,
posted.
we're stuck waiting. So since last year was so good, and this year seems to be so far pretty good with music, where do you see it going forward? Do you see music actually overtaking storytelling or gameplay or graphics in any of those other categories where people say, oh yeah, I got this game just for the music versus, oh, I got this game because the graphics are beautiful, or, oh, the story is fantastic. Like, do you see a day where people just say music is the reason I got this game?
Oh my gosh. I hope not. But at the same time, that's a hard question because it has to help the other roles in the game development. Like when one of those areas is like stands out more than the other, like it has really really good graphics but the gameplay sucks, or like it has really really good gameplay but there's no music or whatever. So I feel my hope is that the music will be balanced enough with the rest of the areas of game developing that it will have the same importance. You know what I mean? Like that you go and buy a game because you're like, oh, this has excellent graphics, this has excellent storytelling and good music as well. At least what I think we're gonna be getting more is the technology advances of music implementation in a video game, and I cannot wait to see more of that. And what I'm saying is like how to make the music the most interactive it can be, where it can be like live performed music, but at the same time it just like interweaves with all these elements in the gameplay that you don't notice. It's like super subtle transitions, and like you don't notice that it's just like looping or layering like more stuff or just like changing to another track. It's just like this piece being written and unraveling in front of you. So that's what I think the future is going to be, where and not necessarily like algorithmically procedurally like music or whatever, but like something predefined. You know how like in some games like Telltale games you have all these ramifications of where the story can go. So I want that, but with music as well. So
Yeah, I can see that would be really cool.
hopefully, yeah.
I,
Hopefully
I
soon.
hope a future where that is the case. Now you have done music from Zelda, obviously, the Ballads of Hyrule. You have Sins of Hyrule, and there's Love, the EP. You did Final Fantasy. You had 2 albums. You have Materia and Successor. You did Fallout 4 with Vault 111 and other albums and Nier. You need to do Final Fantasy 6,
Yeah.
but definitely. But that's besides the point. That's like editor's note. Which of the series that you've done so far has been like your favorite? Like you said, I really love doing the music from this series.
Zelda, like hands down. It's just like I could keep milking those soundtracks because it's just like I keep finding new things in these pieces that I've heard since I was a kid, and nothing makes me more excited to work on that than Zelda, because I get like super into the lore, and like especially when Sins of Hyrule, it was like months of just like getting all my lore together and just being like, okay, is this like timeline accurate or whatever, and then I discover so many things I haven't even seen in the games, and that makes me want to go and play the games again. So I don't think there's been a series that has made me want to do that musically yet. Of course, there's other ones, but trying to think of a second favorite, but that's where like a lot of them overlap, right? Like I definitely love the music from Final Fantasy series, but also we're talking about like Smash Brothers, and like because Smash Brothers does everything. But even the original music from Smash Brothers, I think it's like probably.
Oh yeah, that's even still good. The menu themes and stuff are really good.
Yeah, and like Final Destination, and like
Brawl's
those classics.
Is like this big opus.
Yeah, I know. So it's really hard to pick. There's also Skyrim, but then that would just be talking about like what's my favorite album from a video game versus like what makes me more the most excited to work on.
You gotta. I think if you're working on it and you're not excited, then it's work.
Yeah,
that becomes
exactly.
work. You know, it's like a
Yeah.
job. You know, if you're doing it, you love it. That's like a career. You know, like that's
Hmm.
you don't even realize you're doing work. You're doing it because you love it, and
Yeah.
that's I think it comes through. Like definitely listen to this album. You know, the whole time I'm like, yeah, this is done as a passion project. Like there's a lot of love behind this album, and again, I can't recommend this enough. Now we're gonna close up here. Any final thoughts just on the album on in the future in the gaming industry, especially with E3 going on, where you'd like to see, like, hey, you know, of a particular series with music come out, you know, like just opening up a trailer, like, oh, there's a theme I want, you know, something like that.
That kind of happened today with the Ubisoft, but the reverse. I saw the Assassin's Creed trailer, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna play this game because I played all of them. You know, this one looks very cool. But at the very end, when they show the title, you hear like Ezio's theme in the background. I don't know if you're familiar with
Yeah,
it. For me, it's like the most iconic like theme from Assassin's
yeah,
Creed series. And I was just like, "Whoa, this is so cool!" My heart wanted to hear that, but I was like, "Well, that's Ezio's theme. That has nothing to do with Rome or whatever." And that even like triggered like some, I don't know, like conspiracy theories, like connection between the games and stuff like that. But you know, so I guess, and with that effect in mind, I want to hear that in the Nintendo conference. That's tomorrow, right?
yes, that's tomorrow.
Yeah, like I just want to hear a trailer that starts with a theme that we all know, like just all like, you know, dark and everything, and we immediately know what it is. I think they kind of did that with the Metroid Prime 4 reveal.
Yeah.
Like before the 4 comes into the foreground, it's like you could hear Metroid and you're like, this is Metroid, like, you know. Like there's nothing else that it could be right now.
And that was a good reveal just because of that. It got people talking. I mean, but no, it
Exactly.
was the logo. That's real. But the
Yeah,
music
it's
helped.
just a 4, like.
Like without that music, it would have been okay, whatever. But that music is what I
Mhm.
think really got people hyped up.
Yep. So I'm definitely excited for that. I hope they start the trailer if they show anything this year from Metroid Prime 4, which I hope they do.
Most likely, they'll
Um,
probably start with
yeah.
Smash,
Yeah.
like new
Yeah, that
characters then
too.
on.
Yeah,
Well,
oh my gosh, those are so high.
I know. And you know, you're probably watching this now. This is already done, and you're probably like, oh yeah, this is exactly what happened. You fools from the past don't know. Because for us, it's the future.
I know.
But if you are watching this, you know, and you do want to support Rozen, please go to his website, rozen.audio, and all his albums are there. This one is Ballads of Hyrule. And you can get it digitally for $10. But what I do like, Materia Collective, I talked with them last time about this. You guys do physical, and I'm a physical collector. I love
Yep.
having physical. Like I said, I imported the Xenoblade Chronicles 2 physical
Yeah.
collector's edition soundtrack from Japan because in America we just got digital. But you can get a CD of this album. It's $25, and that ships July 1st. And then you're also doing vinyl, which is really cool. Limited vinyl. That's $35. That ships July 16th of this year.
Correct.
So I think that's great that you guys are doing physical media. Never let physical die.
Nope,
You know,
never.
and this is great. So you know, I might have to pick up some of these just to have them on my shelf, just
Yeah, for sure.
to make sure. Because, like I said, this album is beautiful. I listened to it several times
Thanks.
already, and I'm just gonna keep listening to it. Like now it's like been my work thing. Like while I'm doing E3 stuff, I've just been having it on the background in loop, and I'm like, oh yeah, you know, it gets me motivated, especially
Oh, that
thinking
makes me
about
happy.
tomorrow.
Oh, that's good.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I
Yeah,
do
thanks for
appreciate
having
it.
me. Hmm.
And like I said, everybody, please go to rosin.audio and pick up the album now. And for all your Nintendo news, please go to NintendoFuse.com. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel where we have videos like this, other industry talks. We have our game chat reviews. We have our podcast. We're going to have our E3 recap videos that are going to be up most likely by the time this airs. But check those out and all our other stuff. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great day.